Sarah Martinez stood in the cramped electronics repair shop, clutching her grandfather's peculiar digital watch, while three technicians huddled around the ancient device, shaking their heads and exchanging knowing glances. The oldest technician adjusted his thick glasses and pointed at the cracked LCD display that flickered between incomprehensible number sequences instead of showing any recognizable time format. The watch had been sitting in her grandfather's desk drawer for months after his funeral, and Sarah had only discovered it while cleaning out his study, when she noticed it was still somehow powered despite having no visible battery compartment or charging port. The device looked like something from the 1980s, with a thick, black plastic band and a rectangular face that displayed green digital numbers, but instead of hours and minutes, it showed long decimal sequences that changed every few seconds. When Sarah first brought the watch to the repair shop, the youngest technician had immediately started laughing and called over his colleagues to witness what he described as the most bizarre malfunction he had ever encountered. The numbers on the display read 47, 2581, followed by 8.5478, then shifted to 35.6892 and 139.6917, before cycling through dozens of other seemingly random combinations that made no mathematical sense to anyone present. The shop owner emerged from the back room, wiping grease from his hands, and examined the watch with growing confusion because the internal components appeared to be far more sophisticated than the external casing suggested. When he attempted to open the back panel, he discovered it was sealed with some kind of specialized screws that none of his tools could grip properly, and the metal seemed to be made from an alloy he could not identify. Sarah explained that her grandfather had been a naval engineer who worked on classified projects during the Cold War, but had never spoken about his specific assignments or the origins of any equipment he kept in his personal collection. The repair shop staff continued to chuckle among themselves, assuming the watch was simply a broken calculator or some kind of novelty item that had malfunctioned beyond repair. Frustrated by their dismissive attitude, Sarah decided to take the watch to her former geology professor, Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had always encouraged her students to investigate unusual phenomena. With scientific rigor, Dr. Vasquez examined the number sequences with immediate interest because her trained eye recognized a familiar pattern in the decimal arrangements that the repair technicians had completely missed. The professor pulled out her laptop and began entering the numbers into a geographic information system, while explaining that the sequences appeared to follow the precise format used for latitude and longitude coordinates in modern GPS navigation systems. The first set of numbers 47, 2581, and 8.5478 corresponded to a location in the Swiss Alps, while 35.6892 and 139.6917 pointed to a spot near Tokyo Bay. As they continued plotting each coordinate pair on the digital map, a disturbing pattern began to emerge because every single location pointed to remote areas far from populated regions, including deep ocean trenches, isolated mountain peaks, and uninhabited desert regions scattered across multiple continents. Dr. Vasquez noted that several coordinates indicated positions thousands of meters below sea level in parts of the Pacific Ocean where no human infrastructure should exist. The most intriguing coordinate set led them to a position approximately 200 nautical miles west of the California coast, at a depth of exactly 3,000 meters below the ocean surface. Dr. Vasquez accessed satellite imagery databases and oceanographic surveys to investigate the location more thoroughly, while Sarah watched the watch display continue cycling through new coordinate sequences. Every few minutes, when the satellite images loaded on the computer screen, both women fell silent because the ocean floor at those precise coordinates showed an unmistakable geometric shadow that appeared far too regular and structured to be a natural formation. The shadow measured approximately 500 meters in length and displayed perfect right angles that suggested artificial construction rather than geological processes. Dr. Vasquez enhanced the image resolution and discovered that the geometric shape appeared to be partially buried under sediment, but still visible enough to indicate a massive rectangular structure embedded in the seafloor. The surrounding area showed no other similar formations for hundreds of kilometers in any direction, making the discovery even more mysterious and significant. Sarah examined her grandfather's watch more carefully and noticed tiny symbols etched into the metal casing around the display that she had previously assumed were decorative. Elements, but now realized might be some kind of identification markings or technical specifications. The symbols included geometric patterns that seemed to match the angular design of the underwater structure visible in the satellite imagery. The professor suggested they contact marine research institutions to investigate the coordinates further, but warned Sarah that such deep ocean exploration required specialized equipment and significant funding that might be difficult to obtain without official backing from government agencies or major universities. Sarah realized that her grandfather had somehow known about this underwater location decades before satellite technology made it possible to detect such structures from space. As they prepared to leave the university, Dr. Vasquez noticed that the watch had begun displaying a new sequence of coordinates that pointed to a location in the North Atlantic Ocean at an even greater depth of 4,200 meters below the surface. The timing seemed too coincidental to be random, and both women began to suspect that the device was not simply showing stored data, but was actively receiving new information from an unknown source. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she realized that her grandfather's mysterious watch was somehow connected to multiple underwater locations around the globe, and that someone or something was still transmitting coordinate data to the device decades after his death. The implications of this discovery suggested that her grandfather had been involved in something far more significant than routine naval engineering projects, and that the truth about his classified work was hidden beneath thousands of meters of ocean water waiting to be uncovered. Vasquez spent 3 sleepless nights making phone calls to marine research contacts across the country, while Sarah researched her grandfather's naval service records and discovered that most of his military files had been classified at levels far above standard engineering assignments. The breakthrough came when Dr. Vasquez reached Dr. Marcus Chen at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, who had access to the deep-sea research vessel Nereid, equipped with a state-of-the-art submersible. Capable of reaching depths exceeding 4,000 meters, Dr. Chen initially expressed skepticism about investigating coordinates from a broken watch. But his curiosity was piqued when Dr. Vasquez sent him the enhanced satellite imagery showing the geometric anomaly on the ocean floor. The structure's precise rectangular shape and massive scale convinced him that the discovery warranted scientific investigation, especially since the location had never been surveyed by any official oceanographic mission. Within a week, the research team assembled at the port of San Diego, where the Nereid was docked and prepared for what they assumed would be a routine deep-sea geological survey. Sarah insisted on joining the expedition, despite having no formal marine research experience, and Dr. Chen reluctantly agreed after she signed extensive liability waivers and demonstrated basic understanding of submersible safety protocols. The journey to the coordinates took 18 hours through increasingly rough Pacific waters, and Sarah spent most of the voyage studying her grandfather's watch, which continued displaying new coordinate sequences at irregular intervals. The device seemed to respond to their proximity to the target location by cycling through the numbers more rapidly and displaying additional symbols that had not appeared during their initial examination. When they reached the designated coordinates, the crew deployed sonar mapping equipment to create detailed images of the seafloor. Before attempting any manned descent, the sonar readings immediately confirmed the presence of a massive artificial structure, measuring approximately 800 meters in length and 200 meters in width, buried under decades of sediment accumulation. But Still clearly visible as a geometric anomaly, Dr. Chen piloted the submersible Triton, with Sarah and marine archaeologist Dr. Rebecca Torres as passengers, while the descent began through the crystal-clear surface waters that gradually darkened as they approached the abyssal depths. At 1,000 meters, the external lights illuminated strange bioluminescent creatures that seemed unusually abundant for this particular region of the Pacific. As they descended past 2,000 meters, Sarah's watch began, emitting a faint pulsing light that synchronized with the coordinate display changes, and Dr. Torres noted that the device appeared to be responding to some kind of electromagnetic signal originating from the ocean floor. The pulsing grew stronger as they approached 3,000 meters, and the watch display locked onto a single coordinate sequence that matched their exact position. When the submersible's powerful floodlights first illuminated the seafloor structure, all three occupants fell silent, because what they discovered defied every expectation they had formed during the descent. The massive rectangular formation was clearly artificial and constructed from a dark metallic material that reflected their lights with an almost mirror-like surface quality. The structure appeared to be a single monolithic piece without visible joints or construction seams, and its surface was covered with intricate geometric patterns and symbols that matched exactly the markings etched into Sarah's grandfather's watch. Dr. Torres immediately began photographing everything, while Dr. Chen maneuvered the submersible around the perimeter to document the full scope of the discovery. Along the eastern edge of the structure, they discovered what appeared to be an entrance or portal consisting of a circular opening approximately 10 meters in diameter, surrounded by concentric rings of symbols that seemed to spiral inward toward the center. The opening was sealed by what looked like a metallic iris mechanism similar to a camera aperture, but constructed on a massive scale. Sarah's watch suddenly began displaying a rapid sequence of symbols that matched the patterns surrounding the entrance, and she realized that her grandfather had somehow been involved in the original discovery or construction of this underwater installation. The implications were staggering because the structure's size and sophisticated design suggested technology far beyond anything publicly known to exist in the 1960s. When her grandfather was active in naval service, Dr. Chen attempted to maneuver the submersible closer to the entrance, but as they approached within 50 meters of the structure, his communication equipment began receiving interference and the submersible's navigation systems started displaying erratic readings. The watch on Sarah's wrist was now pulsing so brightly that it illuminated the entire passenger compartment, and the coordinate display was cycling through sequences faster than anyone could read. Suddenly, the iris mechanism at the entrance began to open with mechanical precision, revealing a dark tunnel that extended deep into the structure and appeared to be filled with some kind of breathable atmosphere rather than seawater. Dr. Torres documented everything with her cameras, while Dr. Chen immediately began emergency ascent procedures because the situation had clearly moved beyond the scope of their scientific mission as they rose toward the surface. Sarah noticed that her watch had recorded the exact time and coordinates of their encounter with the structure and was now displaying a new set of numbers that pointed to a location in the North Atlantic Ocean. The device seemed to be guiding them toward additional underwater installations scattered across the globe. During the 18-hour return journey to San Diego, Dr. Chen transmitted their findings to Scripps headquarters, but within hours of their arrival at port, they were met by a team of federal agents, who immediately confiscated all photographic evidence and classified the entire mission under national security protocols. The agents questioned each team member separately and required them to sign non-disclosure agreements that prohibited any discussion of their discoveries. Sarah managed to conceal her grandfather's watch from the agents by hiding it inside her diving equipment. But when she attempted to contact Dr. Vasquez, she discovered that her professor had also been visited by government officials and warned against pursuing any further investigation of the coordinates. The speed and efficiency of the government response suggested that someone had been monitoring their activities from the beginning. That evening, Sarah met secretly with Dr. Chen at a coffee shop near the harbor, where he revealed that he had managed to hide a backup memory card containing photographs of the underwater structure before the agents seized his equipment. The images clearly showed the metallic construction and symbol patterns, but also captured something else that none of them had noticed during the dive-in. Several photographs taken near the entrance. Sarah could see what appeared to be additional structures extending deeper into the ocean floor, suggesting that what they had discovered was only the surface portion of a much larger underground complex. The scale of the installation implied a massive construction project that would have required resources and technology far beyond the capabilities of any known government or private organization. Dr. Chen explained that similar discoveries had been made at other deep ocean locations over the past several decades, but all investigations had been immediately classified, and the researchers involved had been sworn to secrecy or transferred to different projects. Sarah realized that her grandfather had likely been part of a much larger program involving these underwater installations, and that his watch was somehow connected to a network of similar structures around the world. As they prepared to leave the coffee shop, Sarah's watch began displaying coordinates for a location in the Mariana Trench at a depth of over 6,000 meters, and she understood that their discovery was only the beginning of a much larger mystery that her grandfather had spent his entire career trying to understand. The government's immediate response suggested that these installations were still active and that someone was very concerned about preventing public knowledge of their existence. Sarah made the decision to continue investigating the coordinates despite the obvious risks, because she felt obligated to complete whatever mission her grandfather had started decades earlier, but she also realized that she would need to be extremely careful to avoid detection by the same government agencies that had so quickly shut down their official research efforts. Sarah waited 3 weeks before attempting to contact Dr. Chen, again using encrypted messaging apps and burner phones she purchased with cash to avoid government surveillance. But when she finally reached him, he revealed that federal agents had been monitoring his communications and had threatened to revoke his research credentials if he continued investigating the underwater coordinates. Dr. Chen agreed to meet her at a remote beach north of Santa Barbara, where they could speak without electronic surveillance during their clandestine meeting. Dr. Chen produced a waterproof case containing the hidden memory card with photographs from their submersible dive, and explained that he had made multiple copies before the government confiscated his official equipment. The images showed details of the underwater structure that they had missed during their initial examination, including what appeared to be docking ports along the sides of the installation and mechanical systems that suggested the facility was still operational. Sarah studied the photographs while her grandfather's watch continued cycling through new coordinate sequences, and she noticed that several of the symbols visible on the structure's surface matched hieroglyphic-like markings that appeared intermittently on her watch display. Dr. Chen pointed out that the metallic construction showed no signs of corrosion or marine growth, despite being submerged for what must have been decades, suggesting that the installation was constructed from materials with properties unknown to conventional metallurgy. The most disturbing photograph showed the circular entrance with its iris mechanism partially open, revealing a tunnel that extended deep into the structure and appeared to contain artificial lighting systems that were still functioning. The implications were staggering, because it meant that someone or something was maintaining these underwater installations, and that they remained active long after her grandfather's involvement in whatever project had created them. Dr. Chen revealed that he had been researching similar discoveries made by other marine research teams over the past 30 years and had found evidence of at least 12 comparable structures located at precise depths around the globe. But every investigation had been immediately classified, and the researchers involved had been transferred to different projects or had their funding mysteriously withdrawn. The pattern suggested a coordinated effort to suppress knowledge. Of these installations, Sarah's watch suddenly began displaying a new sequence that pointed to coordinates much closer to their current location, approximately 50 miles offshore from Monterey Bay, at a depth of 2,800 meters. Dr. Chen recognized the area as part of the Monterey Canyon system, where he had conducted previous research, and confirmed that no artificial structures had ever been officially documented in that region. They decided to investigate the new coordinates using Dr. Chen's personal research equipment, including a small, remotely operated vehicle that he kept at a private marina for independent projects. The ROV was equipped with high-definition cameras and could reach depths of 3,000 meters, making it perfect for documenting whatever they might find at the Monterey coordinates. 3 days later, they launched the ROV from a chartered fishing boat operated by Captain Maria Santos, who agreed to help them without asking questions about their research objectives. The descent to 2,800 meters took 40 minutes, and when the ROV's cameras first illuminated the seafloor, they discovered another massive rectangular structure similar to the one they had found near San Diego, but this installation appeared to be much older and partially collapsed. The Monterey structure showed significant damage along its eastern wall, with sections of the metallic hull breached and debris scattered across the surrounding seafloor. Dr. Chen maneuvered the ROV through one of the larger openings, and the cameras revealed internal chambers filled with equipment that appeared to be decades old, but constructed with technology that neither researcher could identify. Inside the damaged structure, they discovered what appeared to be living quarters designed for human occupancy, including sleeping areas and workstations that suggested the installation had been inhabited for extended periods. The most shocking discovery came when the ROV's cameras focused on a wall covered with photographs and documents that were somehow preserved despite the marine environment. Among the photographs, Sarah recognized her grandfather's face in several group pictures, showing him with other men wearing naval uniforms and standing beside equipment that matched the technology they had found inside the underwater installations. The documents were written in multiple languages, including English, Russian, and what appeared to be an unknown symbolic system that matched the markings on Sarah's watch. Dr. Chen used the ROV's mechanical arm to retrieve several of the preserved documents, and when they returned to shore, Sarah spent hours studying the materials with growing amazement. The papers revealed that her grandfather had been part of an international project called Deep Echo that involved cooperation between American, Soviet, and other naval forces during the height of the Cold War. The documents indicated that Deep Echo was established after multiple governments discovered evidence of pre-existing underwater structures that appeared to be constructed by an unknown civilization. The project's mission was to study these installations and attempt to establish communication with whatever intelligence had created them, but the papers suggested that the project had been terminated abruptly in 1967 after a series of incidents that were heavily redacted in the available documents. Sarah found her grandfather's personal journal among the retrieved materials, and his entries described encounters with beings that he referred to as the architects who had built the underwater installations thousands of years before human civilization developed advanced technology. The journal indicated that these beings had been monitoring human progress and had chosen specific individuals to serve as liaisons between their civilization and humanity. According to her grandfather's notes, the watch she now wore was actually a communication device provided by the architects and was genetically coded to respond only to his direct descendants. The device was designed to activate when humanity reached a sufficient level of technological development to understand and appreciate the significance of the underwater installations. The journal's final entries described her grandfather's growing concern that military officials wanted to weaponize the architect technology rather than pursue peaceful communication, and he had made the decision to hide the watch and destroy most evidence of his involvement in Deep Echo to protect both civilizations from the consequences of military exploitation. Sarah realized that the watch had remained dormant for decades, until her DNA activated it, proving that she was her grandfather's intended successor in maintaining contact with the architects. The coordinate sequences were not random locations, but were guiding her to installations where she could continue. The communication process that her grandfather had started as she studied the documents more carefully. Sarah discovered that her grandfather had hidden additional materials at locations corresponding to the coordinates displayed on her watch, and that each cache contained pieces of a larger puzzle that would reveal the full scope of the architect civilization and their intentions regarding humanity. The most disturbing revelation came when Sarah found references to government officials who had opposed her grandfather's peaceful approach and had formed a secret faction within Deep Echo that planned to use the underwater installations for military purposes. The journal indicated that this faction had been responsible for the project's termination and had spent the subsequent decades searching for the communication device that Sarah now possessed. Dr. Chen helped Sarah analyze the technical specifications included in the documents, and they realized that the architect technology was far more advanced than anything currently available to human science. The installations were powered by energy sources that appeared to be self-sustaining, and the construction materials showed properties that defied conventional physics. Sarah's watch began displaying coordinates for locations around the globe, where her grandfather had hidden additional caches of information, and she understood that she would need to visit each site to piece together the complete story of Deep Echo and the architect civilization. The task seemed overwhelming, but she felt obligated to complete her grandfather's mission and protect the peaceful intentions of both civilizations. As they prepared to investigate the next set of coordinates, Sarah noticed that her watch was also receiving new transmissions that appeared to be coming directly from the architect installations, suggesting that the beings were aware of her activities and were actively trying to re-establish communication through the device her grandfather had left for her. The implications were staggering because it meant that humanity was on the verge of making contact with an advanced civilization that had been patiently waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. But Sarah also realized that the same government faction that had opposed her grandfather was probably still active and would do everything possible to prevent peaceful communication and seize the architect technology for military purposes. Sarah spent the next 2 weeks following coordinates from her grandfather's watch to hidden caches across 3 continents, including a waterproof container buried beneath a lighthouse in Maine and a metal box concealed inside an abandoned mine shaft. In Colorado, each cache contained fragments of technical documentation and personal letters that gradually revealed the full scope of her grandfather's involvement with the architect civilization and the growing conflict within Deep Echo between peaceful researchers and military hardliners. The most significant discovery came from a cache hidden in a Swiss bank vault that her grandfather had arranged for her to aces using a genetic identification system that recognized her DNA signature. The vault contained complete technical specifications for the communication device she wore and detailed maps showing the locations of 47 architect installations scattered across the ocean floors of every continent. According to the documentation, the architects were an ancient aquatic civilization that had evolved on Earth millions of years before humans developed intelligence and had been monitoring the progress of surface civilizations for thousands of years. The underwater installations served as observation posts and communication hubs that allowed the architects to study human development without interfering in natural evolutionary processes. Sarah learned that her grandfather had been selected as a human liaison after demonstrating exceptional integrity and scientific curiosity during his naval service, and that the communication device was designed to activate only when humanity reached a technological level that would allow meaningful dialogue between the two civilizations. The watch contained translation protocols that could convert architect communications into human language and vice versa. The most disturbing revelation came from her grandfather's final reports, which described how military officials within Deep Echo had discovered the peaceful nature of the architect civilization and had immediately begun planning to exploit their advanced technology for weapons development. The faction was led by Admiral Harrison Blackwad, who believed that humanity should seize architect technology by force rather than pursue diplomatic cooperation. Her grandfather notes indicated that Admiral Blackwood had assembled a secret team of military scientists and engineers who were developing plans to capture architect, installations, and reverse engineer their technology for military applications. The Admiral viewed the peaceful intentions of the architects as a sign of weakness that humanity should exploit rather than respect. Sarah realized that her grandfather had hidden the communication device and destroyed most evidence of the architect locations to prevent Admiral Blackwood's faction from launching military attacks against the underwater installations, but the Admiral had spent the subsequent decades searching for any remaining evidence of the Deep Echo project and would certainly attempt to seize the device if he discovered its existence. As Sarah studied the technical documentation, she began to understand that the communication device was far more sophisticated than a simple translator and actually served as a quantum entanglement communicator that allowed instantaneous contact with architect installations regardless of distance. The device had been dormant for decades, but was now actively receiving transmissions from multiple installations as the architects attempted to re-establish contact with humanity. The watch began displaying complex symbol sequences that Sarah recognized as architect language based on the translation, protocols in her grandfather's documentation, and when she activated the device's communication mode, she received her first direct message from the architect civilization. The message was brief, but profound, expressing gratitude that communication had been re-established and requesting a meeting at specific coordinates in the Pacific Ocean. Sarah understood that the architects were offering humanity a second chance at peaceful contact, despite the military threats they had faced during the original Deep Echo project, but she also realized that Admiral Blackwood's faction was probably still monitoring for any signs of renewed architect activity and would certainly detect her communications if she was not extremely careful. Dr. Chen helped Sarah analyze the architect message, and they determined that the requested meeting location was at a depth of 3,500 meters, approximately 300 miles west of Hawaii, where satellite image